All right, so before we dive in, I have a free resource for you. It's my step-by-step home buying guide. It is on YouTube. The link is in the presentation. You will be sent out this link as well after completion of the webinar. It's a comprehensive walkthrough of the buying process from start to finish. If you want a deeper dive into any steps we discussed today, you can watch it later for a detailed analysis. All right, so what to expect today? I'll be giving a quick snapshot of the current GTA market as of May 2025. Is it a buyer's or a seller's market? What prices are doing so you know the landscape you're entering. Then we'll tackle the big question, Toronto versus the suburbs. Where should you invest? Many first time buyers wonder if they should buy a smaller place in the city or a bigger place further out. We'll compare the pros, cons, and data for all these different areas. We'll also go over how to prepare your own down payment and all the upfront costs that required. We'll touch on all the new first-time buyer incentives that can also help. I'll show you a quick rent versus Y calculation using my own tool. Sorry, I'll just ask him to mute. Uh, Mute. Okay, perfect. All right. So how to prepare your down payment. We'll also do the rent versus buy. We'll look at some real examples of starter home in today's market, the actual price points for a condo, townhouse, and a house, so you'll see what's possible. Also, we'll share some real-time client success stories. Finally, we'll talk about building your long-term real estate portfolio, how my team can help you not just with your first home, but with growing that into an investment that builds wealth over time. Then we'll open up for Q&A. I'll be happy to tackle any questions you have. If that sounds good, let's get started. All right, let's come to the quick market snapshot. Let's start with what's happening right now in the Greater Toronto Area. If you've been following the news, you might have heard the market has cooled compared to the crazy peak of a couple of years ago. It's definitely true. We are seeing a much more balanced market. It's even leaning towards a buyer's market in many segments. Last month, GDA sales were down by about 23% compared to same time last year. The buyers have been a bit hesitant with high interest rates, and a lot of people pressed the pause button because we had a federal election in April, which made people slightly uncertain. But the good news is that the new listings were up 8% year over year. So there's more options popping up for the buyers compared to the last spring. With more supply, fewer sales, that means less competition. You're not facing 20 offer bidding wars of the past. You might actually have some breathing room to choose and negotiate. Talking about the prices, the average selling price across home sorry, the average selling price across all home types is about 1.1 million, which is about 4.1% lower than just a year ago. Prices have softened slightly, especially for the condos and the townhouses. For example, condos in Toronto are averaging about 710,000 right now, which is down from last year. In the suburbs of outside Toronto pockets, the condos are averaging about 618,000. So as a condo buyer, you're seeing a bit of a price dip, which could be a window of an opportunity for you. But in general, the detached houses have held their values better than the condos. The average detached in the city of Toronto is still at about 1.7 million, which is at par to the last year's value. Outside in the suburbs, a detached average is still about 1.32 million. Those are definitely big numbers. But remember, that's an average of all the regions and all the sizes. But starter homes can start with much less. We'll see some examples later in this webinar. The key point here is the prices are not skyrocketing right now. They've actually dipped year over year, which is a relief for the buyers. Now, when we talk about market averages, it's important to remember something. Those are GTA wide numbers, but real estate is hyper local. Let me give you a couple of examples. In Toronto, especially central pockets, like let's say like Leslieville, we're already seeing homes under 1.2 million getting multiple offers again. Just last week, I was at a bidding, a semi-detached at Yonge and Davisville had 7 offers and went for about 5% over the asking price. Even in Durham, things are not uniform. Let's say Williamsburg area in Whitby, it's still pretty hot. Homes under 1 million are seeing multiple offers and a short days on the market. But go a little further north, let's say into Brooklyn, which is a suburb of Whitby, it's much more calmer. Listings are sitting a bit longer and buyers have more leverage. So when you hear prices are going down or inventory is going up, yes, but on an average. But what really matters is your neighborhood, your price range, and your goals. That's why it helps to work with someone who knows how to read the market at the absolute street level. Now, looking at the market balance, with more listings, slightly lower prices, buyers have gained the negotiating power. If I used an old cliche, it's a buyer's market, at least more so than I've seen in the years. For first time buyers, that's definitely encouraging. You may not have to fight as much, and you might even negotiate conditions like financing, inspection into your offers now. And talking about interest rates and affordability, why has the market cooled down? The main reason is higher interest rates over the past year, which has priced some of the buyers out. But here's a recent development. Rates have stabilized and are expected to slow down coming later this year in 2025. The banks of Canada signaled they might cut rates possibly twice by the end of 2025 if the inflation stays under control. The borrowing costs are not rock bottom, but they are not climbing like they did back in 2022. In fact, the mortgage rates eased a bit compared to, let's say, late 2024. With improved affordability, the monthly mortgage payments have become slightly more manageable for the same home price. And there are a few federal programs like amortization extended to 30 years that have definitely kicked in to help the first time buyers with the affordability. Now, the bottom line, as of May 2025, the GTA market offers more choices at slightly better prices for the buyers compared to the last year. It's a moment where first-time buyers have a bit of an edge, or at least a fighting chance. You should definitely use it. You can actually take the time to do an inspection, negotiate your terms, balance out the closing dates, and not feel quite as pressured to bid 100,000 over asking as it was a few years ago. Now that the market is relatively friendly, the next big question is where should you buy? Is it in the city or is it outside the city? That is one most common dilemma first time buyers face. Do you buy a small condo in Toronto's core or a townhouse maybe an hour away? There's no one size fits all answer. It all depends on your lifestyle, your work, your investment goals. Let's break it down by comparing a central Toronto location, let's say like a Young and Shepherd, as an example of a North York City hub, versus something which is, I would say, a mid range suburb of Mississauga or Vaughan, and then comparing that to a slightly further suburb of the Durham region, let's say Oshawa or Curtis. Now, we look at the price trends, the rental demand, lifestyle factors, transit, and the impact of work from home system on these choices. Now, coming to the home prices and appreciation, generally the city properties cost more per square foot, but have historically steadier appreciation. Suburbs were cheaper, but in the past 5 years, many suburbs actually saw faster price growth percentage wise. During the pandemic, suburban house prices surged dramatically, with people wanting more space, some wanting home office spaces. That outpaced the gains in the downtown condo market. But for instance, let's say a detached house in the Durham region of Oshawa or Curtis in 2020, in 2019 was far cheaper than one in Toronto. And while it's still cheaper today, the gap narrowed after the suburban boom. Now, with higher rates, suburban have seen again some corrections. As of 2025, a Toronto home still has the highest price tag, while places in the suburbs like York or Peel region have an average price points of about 900 to a million. Toronto is sitting at about 1.5 to 2 million. And further, suburban areas in the Durham are sitting at an average of about 800,000-ish. And that's for an average for all home types. Looking at the long-term appreciation, the city core tends to be more stable, whereas suburbs may have higher highs but lower lows, which is more volatile and also depends on how the market conditions are in those suburban areas. So if you bought something in the suburban pre-2020, you might have seen a huge appreciation. But if you bought something in the peak of 22 or 23, you might have seen a bit of a dip, which is now on the recovery. So city means slow and steady growth. Suburban means faster growth, but also could be a faster decline if the market changes. Now, coming to the rental demand and vacancy, if your plan if part of your plan is to rent out the property, it could be either now or sometime in the future. Uh, Consider the rental demand. Toronto City has a very strong rental demand. A lot of professionals and newcomers want to rent near the subway. The basic reason is you don't, when you come in new to the country, you don't get a car and you want something which is more transit friendly. The vacancy rates for these properties in and around Toronto is less than 1%, whereas some of these properties in the slightly suburban areas of Mississauga or Vaughan, the vacancy rates are between 3 to 5%. But if you take it slightly further out, the vacancy rates increase to about 5 to 7%, which, if you compare, is still below our 10-year average. So, overall vacancy rates in GTA are still lower. We have renters for all the locations. But Toronto has the deepest pool of renters, especially with people who are more dependent on the transit rather than their own cars. All right. Now, with the work from home impact, the pandemic changed the game over here completely. When remote work became common, many folks left the city core for suburban spaces. For example, I had a client who sold their downtown condo and bought houses in the suburbs so they could have a home office, a decent sized backyard for their family. This urban exodus drove up the suburban prices big time in 2020 and 2022. But now in 2025, some companies want people back in their office, if not full time, but part time. What we are seeing is a bit of a middle ground and hybrid work situation. People don't necessarily need to be in downtown 5 days a week. Maybe it's 2, 3 days. So buying in the middle suburbs, like let's say Vaughan or Mississauga, has become very popular. You get more space than downtown. You're not too far from it if you have to commute a couple of times a week. If you're fully remote, well, lucky you. But then you have freedom to go far, maybe Durham or even beyond GTA for maximum house for your money. If your job requires regular on-site presence, downtown you could be leaning towards more towards the city central as well. So real estate, it's not just an investment, it's about quality of life. It's where you live day to day. So consider how your work from home versus office will affect your happiness in each of these locations. Sorry. So as you can see, each areas has their own pros and cons. The best investment also depends on your personal situation. If you're a young professional who values time and convenience, maybe a city condo is definitely worth it. You can move up later. If you are starting a family or just want more bang for your buck, a suburban home could offer you more growth as these communities are expanding. One thing I advise is to think not just for now, but 5 to 7 years ahead. Where do you see yourself? If you buy a condo now, do you plan to upgrade to a house in a few years? If so, consider how easy will it be to rent out or sell that place when the time comes to move up. If you buy far out, are you okay holding it for the long term if the market fluctuates or dips like today, what's happening in the suburban market? Honestly, there is no wrong choice. Many of my clients start in the city, then move out as the family grows, while others start in the suburb to get more space and then invest in a rental condo in the city later. We'll talk about long term portfolio planning later in this webinar, which also ties into this decision. But to summarize this section, buy where you will be happy living and you can afford that comfortably. Both city and suburb can be good investments. If you are unsure, I can help you evaluate the specific neighborhoods. Now, looking at the down payment and the upfront costs, uh, let's switch to the major part of this webinar, which is the money. How much cash do you need to buy your first home? This is one of the biggest hurdle for first-time buyers. But don't worry, we'll talk about the programs that can help you in the next section as well. But first, just the basics. What's the minimum down payment requirement? For home up to 500,000, your minimum requirement is 5%. For the portion of price between 500,000 to 1.5 million, that's a minimum 10% on that difference. If your home is priced over 1.5 million, you have to put down 20% down. There is no exception at all. So, what does that mean in practice? Let's say you decide to buy a $600,000 condo. For the first 500, it requires the 5%, which is 25,000. And for the remaining 100,000, that's a 10%, which is $10,000. So, total being about 35,000 minimal down. These are the least you must put from your pocket to get a mortgage approval. Right. Putting more is obviously better. The more you put down, the lesser your monthly payment is. But many first-time buyers do stick to this close to the minimum numbers just so that they can enter the market a bit sooner. Then looking at the next added cost on these mortgages is your mortgage default insurance, also known as the CMHC insurance. If you put less than 20% down, your mortgage will require a CMHC insurance. It's basically a one-time premium added to your mortgage that protects the lender. It does not protect you, it protects the lender in case you default. It allows the banks to lend the buyers more mortgage for a smaller down payment to cover up their risk assessment as well. So you don't pay this upfront, it gets rolled on into your monthly mortgage payments, but just to be aware, it does exist. If you manage to put down 20%, you avoid this insurance altogether. But on today's home prices, let's say you're looking to buy something around 800,000, 20% is a high bar. For 800,000 home, that's almost 160,000, which most first-time buyers don't have sitting around. So don't feel bad if you only have 5 or 10%. That is super common and exactly what these programs are designed for. It's actually better to start minimum, as I said before, to just get your foot into the door. Now, coming at to the closing costs. Beyond the down payment, there's some other costs attached as well. So that would be your land transfer tax, which is the biggest section of the closing cost. Then you'll have the legal fees, which is about 1,500 to 2,000, depending on the case by case situation. If you decide to do a home inspection, which we highly recommend, that's about 500 to $600 on average. And the banks would probably charge you an appraisal fee, which is anywhere between 200 to $500. And then you have moving costs, utility hookups. On an average, I would keep about $1,000 for this as well. And for title insurance, roughly it's about $100 for every $100,000 you spend. So on an average, take about $500 to $1,000 for this. And for home insurance, if it's a condo, it would probably between $30 and $60. If it's a house, it'll be probably between $80 to $120, depending on the type of coverage. So as a good rule of thumb, I always recommend to set aside 1.5 to 2.5% if you're buying outside Toronto, but if you're buying in Toronto, keep about closer to 3 to 4% because Toronto has double land transfer taxes. Now, looking at the first-time buyer incentives, uh, as a buyer in 2025, there's several programs and incentives introduced which help you to afford the first home. I put one of them upfront as well, which is a 30-year amortization extension from 25 years for minimum down payment. But there are some other ones as well, such as your first home savings account, which is also known as the FHSA account. It's a newer program launched in 2023. It's basically a hybrid between RRSP and TFSA, especially for first-time home buyers. You can contribute up to 8,000 per year into your FHSA, which is a lifetime maximum of 40,000. Contributions are tax deductible, just like an RRSP, and the withdrawals for your first home are tax-free, just like your TFSA. It's literally free money from the tax man. But if you put down 8K this year, you could get a 8K deduction on your income taxes. And then when you withdraw, you don't have to pay tax on the growth or the withdrawal. You can keep that account for 15 years and unused contribution. All the room carries forward to the next year. All right. So suppose you manage, let's say, to contribute. Sorry, there's somebody trying to get in. All right. So where was I? Yes, let's say suppose you manage to contribute a full 40,000 over 5 years and invest it in a bit. You might have, let's say, 50,000 saved by then. All that 50,000 can go straight to your down payment, tax free, no need to repay it. All right, so let's go into the next section, which is the RRSP home buyers plan. This is very common. It's been around for a while, but this year there has been a change. Since till 2024, the limit was 35,000 per person, but this has just increased to 60,000 per person. All right. So, sorry, there was some background noise. So that means as a couple, you could tap up to 120,000 of these RRSP savings for your home purchase. You do have to repay the amount to your RSP over the 15-year period. Basically, each year you should put about 1/15th of the amount back into your RRSP, but there is no interest to pay. It's like you're borrowing money from yourself without any interest. Now, with the land transfer tax rebates, as mentioned, the land transfer tax can be a big upfront cost. But thankfully, for first-time buyers, you get a rebate on these taxes. If you outside Toronto, uh, just put somebody on mute. If you buy outside Toronto, your rebate is $4,000. But if you buy within Toronto, you get double rebate, which is 4,000 from the province and 44.75 from the city of Toronto, totaling them up to $84.75. And then you also have a first-time home buyer's tax credit. This is a federal tax credit to help you with the closing cost. A lot of people forget this one, especially the ones that file their own taxes. When you do your own taxes, you can claim, or if anybody does your taxes, you can claim the home buyer's amount of up to $10,000, which is approximately about 1,000 to 1,500 in tax credit. It has just gone up. The limit was 5,000 before with a tax credit of about 750. This has been just double, so that's a good incentive to keep in mind. Uh, so a lot of people might be thinking, great, I have zero in my RRSP or in my FHSA right now, and that's completely okay. Part of my service is helping young buyers plan ahead. For example, if you have some savings sitting in a sorry here. All right. I think the new links are going to everybody now. All right. Let me see where I was on my notes. Uh, Yeah. So as I said, if you don't have any money in your RRSP or FHSA right now, that's completely okay. If you have money sitting in your regular accounts, we might advise you to put some of that in the RRSP and then withdraw it through the home buyer plan, or open an FHSA and start funding that account possibly monthly. Even $200 a month is about 2,400 a year. Combine that with maybe a work bonus or a tax refund at the end of the year, and you can hit that 8,000 benchmark if possible. Sometimes parents or relatives can gift you money to buy your first house. Those funds can also be dropped in your FHSA or RRSP just temporarily, just to get the tax break. And then you can pull them out for the purchase. They are strategies. You just need to get in touch with the right people to help you out with these strategies. Our goal over here is to ensure we don't leave any free money on the table. And remember, if you're buying with someone, let's say a partner or a spouse, each of you can use these programs. The two FHSAs are about 80,000 in total, while two RRSP plans are about 120,000 in total. Now, looking at the rent versus buy, that's the biggest question a lot of people have. Let's look at a 3-year cost breakdown using just bare minimum numbers in terms of appreciation. Uh, I hear this all the time. Am I better waiting off for some more time and saving more, or should I buy now with a smaller down payment? In other words, it's the typical rent versus buy question, which makes more financial sense in the near term. It's a great question because you might think if I wait and save 20%, I won't have to pay the CMHC insurance and my mortgage will be smaller. So maybe that's better. Sometimes that definitely makes sense. But often waiting can cost you more than you expect, especially if the home prices keep rising, even if it's a modest increase. You and you're paying all your rent in the meantime while thinking about those savings and buying the house. I have a very handy tool. I can send it out after the webinar if anybody needs it. It's the rent versus buy calculator. Let me walk you through a simplified scenario of how it runs. Let's say if you decide to buy a $600,000 condo with a minimum 5% down, or deciding to buy 3 years later but with a higher down payment. Let's assume your current rent is about $2,800 a month, which is a typical rent for a two-bedroom condo or a three-bedroom townhouse in and around the city. Uh, you're trying to save that extra $1,500 every month for your down payment after paying off these rents. So total that you're putting out rent plus your saving is roughly around $4,300. Uh, the home prices is expected to conservatively grow at about 2 to 3% in the next coming years. Uh, Ideally, the city of Toronto and the GTA has been growing at about 4 to 6% annually. If I look at the historic graph, not just in the last 4 or 5 years, but in the last 10, 15, 20 years. So if you buy now with minimum down payment for 600,000, your down payment is 35,000. Throw in some of your closing cost as well for about 12,000, including the land transfer. So you need 47,000 in cash to get that mortgage approval. Your mortgage will be around 565. Also add in your CMHC fees in there, brings your total mortgage amount to 588,000. Considering a 4% interest with the extended amortization of 30 years, your monthly carrying cost, which is your mortgage, your taxes, your condo fees, will be roughly around the $3,600 mark. So owning costs you about $800 more per month than your current rent, which is at $2,800. But after all this, your condos, let's say you've been in the market for 3 years, your condo value likely went up. It's a moderate growth of 2 to 3%. A 600,000 becomes, after 3 years, the value comes up to be around 655,000. So you can gain 55,000 in just the home equity based on the market appreciation. And you've been paying off your mortgage as well, slowly chipping away on that principal. After 3 years, you would have paid down roughly close to 30,000 of those mortgage payments. Drink some water. Sorry. All right. So that's an additional equity that you've built by paying yourself in a sense. Combined, you could have around 80,000 in equity based on the down payment plus the mortgage payoff that you've done plus the appreciation. Your initial 47,000 has now grown significantly. In fact, in our example of this situation, the ROI on the initial investment is about 120% for over 3 years, all thanks to the leverage. And considering no appreciation at all, even if your condo stays at the same value, you've still paid down that mortgage and you've built some of the equity for yourself. All right, now if you wait for 3 years just by renting and accumulating that extra down payment you want to pay after 3 years, that $2,800 a month for 3 years is over $100,000 of payment that you've paid down as rent by seeing no returns on it. That money is gone. It's zero equity for you. You've helped your landlords, not yourself. That money uh, is 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 out of your pockets. So now, even if you do say $1,500 a month, which is over for 3 years after paying on the rents, you've saved about $54,000 for your next home purchase. Plus, let's say you've put in the high savings account, you're getting a bit of interest. You'll possibly get $200 to $300 interest in those 3 years. Basically, very minimal interest. So you've probably gotten close to that 55, $56,000 mark, and put on that, add on the existing savings you might have before. Now you might have a larger down payment in your hand, but guess what? Now the same property which was 600,000 3 years ago is now close to the 650 mark due to price appreciation. To avoid CMHC, you would want at least a 20% down if you've been waiting for 3 years, which is roughly for this valuation about 130,000. Now, after waiting for 3 years, paying the rent savings, do you have all that money? If you've saved 47, if you had 47,000 3 years ago and you added 54,000 of savings in those 3 years, you roughly have about $100,000 in your hand. You are still short of that 20% down payment. Even if you didn't aim for that 20%, the minimum down again would go up slightly because the purchase price has now changed. So it's actually higher than what it was like 3 years ago. And what happens in this situation is your goalpost keeps moving further away from you. My calculations will show you that at about a 655,000 condo in 3 years, you'll need 96,000 more if you want to do that 20% down payment. So if you stick to minimum down, you'd pay slightly higher CMHC premium because the price is higher. Plus, remember, you spend 100,000 on rent on these 3 years and build no equity at all. So waiting for 3 years, making 100,000 in rent payment or about 56,000 in lost equity, you could have gained about 156,000 if you would have made that move slightly sooner. All right. So this isn't to say buying now is always the answer, but it illustrates that time in the market often beats trying to time the market. Real estate tends to reward those who get in and hold it for a few years. In fact, when you factor in everything, buying now in that scenario netted you thousands in forced savings and also market gains compared to the renting. You effectively paid yourself each and every month in the principal, whereas when renting, you tried to save, but a big chunk still went out of the window. If the prices were flat or even went down, the math would change. But historically, Toronto prices over the 5+ year period have been pretty steady. Even now, with prices a bit soft, very few are predicting a significant long term drop. The population growth, housing shortage, these are real problems we are facing as of now. So most likely we'll see moderate growth resume shortly, and then the uprise on the graph will be noticed again. You should not based on these calculations, but you should only move forward if you're financially ready to take that decision. You need the income to support the mortgage. You should have a little bit of buffer for your expenses. Don't stretch yourself to a point of a hardship. But if you're ready, waiting just for the sake of a bigger down payment might actually set you back. I encourage clients to use this rent versus buy analysis for their own numbers. If you want us to plug in them for you, we'll be more than happy to give you an analysis on that as well. All right, let's look at some of the real examples of a starter home. We hear the average prices are over $1 million and it's easy to get discouraged. But you don't need $1 million for your first home. I have picked three real world examples of a typical starter property at different price points to show you what's out there. Now, starting at a condo, a one bedroom in North York, let's say in the Young and Shepherd neighborhood, will cost you around 520 to 540,000 range. For around mid 500s, you can get a modern one bedroom condo in the city close to the subway. These are roughly 5 to 600 square feet in a high rise building, about 5 to 20 years old. You have the convenience of TDC subway access, lots of restaurants, and a younger professional vibe. Maintenance fee for these units could be around the 400 to the 500 mark. Uh, I recently listed one of these units for about 529 and sold it for about 525. It's a great entry point for someone tired of renting a basement or wants to get their own space in the city. The down payment roughly for this value is about 30,000. With the closing cost, you would probably need about 35. Monthly carrying cost will be somewhere around 25 to $3,500 range, depending on the interest rates and how much down are you putting in. But as an investment, one bed condos in Toronto have high rental demand. Today, such a unit could rent out easily for 24 to $2,500. So even if it takes you elsewhere, it's a solid rental property. Now, looking at the second option, let's say a townhouse, a three bedroom, let's say in the North Etobicoke or Mid Etobicoke region, will start around 900 to a million price point. You could get a townhouse just on the outskirts of the city. I'll use Etobicoke as the example on the west end. It's within Toronto City, but it's more spacious and car friendly. For about 900 to a million, you might find a three bedroom townhouse. For around 800 to a 900 range, you might even find a condo townhouse uh, with a slight maintenance fee for the common elements. A client of mine just bought a three bed, two bath townhouse in Etobicoke. We paid roughly about 875, 880 for that. It has a small backyard, a parking garage, and was about 1,300 square feet. It's perfect for a young family or a couple who want slightly more space and not live in the core city. All right, now looking at the third option, it's a freehold detached house. It's a 2 to 3 bedroom house outside the core. You can get them from about 750 to 800 price range in the outskirts of, let's say, Oshawa, Curtis, Pickering, Whitby areas as well. And yeah, the options available for prices under 1 million. But in Toronto or like slightly closer to the city, you expect it to pay about 1.1 to 1.2 for a similar size house. Uh, and The only difficulty going suburbs is commute to Toronto. If you are working in Toronto, you should ensure it's close either to a GO station or a transit friendlier pocket to get in. All right, these are just examples of one certain price points can get you, but Toronto has everything in between. You can start from the high 400s or even mid 400s, and there is no upper cap on the properties. There are options like stack towns, which I don't personally like a lot, but they're still an option out in the market. And there are condos in the suburbs as well, which are at a slightly lower price point, but a larger square foot area that they provide. The GTA market is quite diverse. Part of my job is to match you with the right type of property for your budget and your lifestyle. I always ask my clients, what are your top three must haves and top three nice to haves? For some, it's the location. It must be within 30 minutes of work. For others, it's space. You must have three bedrooms or a four bedrooms. We then explore the best compromise. I might say, hey, you can get a third bedroom if you're willing to go to Pickering instead of Scarborough. Or if being on the subway is really crucial, maybe consider two bedroom condo instead of going to a house. When you see these real examples, it makes the process less abstract. They are actual homes people are buying right now as their first homes. All right. So another part of our services, what we go in with real estate is building your long-term portfolio from first home, getting you to an investment. Buying your first home is a huge accomplishment, but that's just the beginning of your real estate journey. I always tell my clients to think beyond their first home. How can this first property set you up for the future wealth? My team's mission is not only to get you a house that you love, but also help you build an investment portfolio over time. If that's the goal of yours, the real estate is one of the best ways to build wealth and even generate passive income. But it doesn't happen overnight. It's a long game and we can plan it out. I've personally done it for myself. I've been in this game for over 12, 14 years, and I've grown my portfolio year over year just following the same protocols and the same calculations. Let me paint a little picture for you. Imagine that you buy a one bedroom condo for let's say around the 500 mark today. In a few years, you might start a family or simply want more space. So you decide to upgrade to a house or even a bigger condo. One option is to keep the first condo as rental. And when you move on to the next place, you take this rent with you for this rental unit and use the leveraged high appreciation value as refinance to buy a second house. That's the way you're not selling your asset, you're adding just another asset. Your tenant covers the rent portion for your first house, and then you move on to your next house. This is how a portfolio begins in a very basic term, one property at a time. Many people think you need to be super rich or have multiple properties, but a lot of my clients started very humbly. But we help them leverage their time and equity and bring them to the three or four property investments that they have today. All right, so now coming back to some real life stories. So these are from my clients. We've changed some of the names just for like privacy concerns. Uh, but one of our clients, one of my very first initial clients, they bought a condo in 2017 for 400,000. We made a basic 10% down payment of 40,000 with a mortgage amount of total 360,000 plus the CMHC. Our monthly payments were about the 1,700 mark. With condo fees and property taxes, our total was about six to 700. Our total monthly carrying cost was 23 to $2,400. 7 years later, just last year in 2024, the condo went up in value to 620,000. The equity buildup is almost 220,000, and they've paid down mortgage by $60,000. Now, total net equity in that condo is sitting at 280,000 for us. And now they decided to buy a semi-detached house in Toronto. The price was about 1,050,000. They had some down payment savings, some from RRSP, some from the other savings. Uh, the mortgage on the new home was roughly about 950,000. We kept the condo. We rented that condo for $2,600 a month. The expenses for that condo was still about the 23, 2,400. So they were net cash flow positive on that. We kept growing equity in both the properties by buying a second one, and they're a hands-off landlord. My team helped them with leasing, and we also help them with the tenant management. Condo mortgage, condo mortgage has been continuously being paid by the tenant. Home equity increased with each payment, and plus the market appreciation. The total net worth increase in just the last 7 years is over 300,000. It is tough to save that amount if you decide to do it just by saving. You need an asset that helps you grow and maintain these appreciations. Now, a second client of ours, they bought their first home in Mississauga, a smaller starter townhouse for 620,000, again with a 10% down. The monthly mortgage payments were about 2,500 dollars. Now in market 2023, it just flipped. So in just 4 years, the house went up to 850,000. They paid down $80,000 in their mortgage. The equity buildup was $370,000 in just 4 years. Now, what we did with that house, we refinanced that to an 80% of the new appraised value of 850,000. They were able to get cash from the bank of almost $200,000 completely tax free. Now, we helped them use that money to buy a pre-construction condo. We booked that condo back in 2023 at 650. Deposit structure was very gradual and very slow, and it's expected to complete later this year. They stayed in the townhouse, they bought a second property using the equity, and none of their savings were used. They also saved some of the money back in their accounts to support their monthly financial payments with that extra refinance. They will be cash flow positive once we rent out that unit that's completing this year. Uh, Both their properties have been completed before they hit 34. Uh, Passive income will start coming from the condo this year, and they'll be on track to buy their third or fourth home in the next 5 to 6 years. Now, look, this is a very beautiful couple we helped in back in 2015. They started with a very moderate one-bedroom condo at about 350,000 in Mississauga. Uh, Down payment was 35,000. Their mortgage monthly payments were about 16 to $1,700 a month, and rental income since 2022, we've been getting about 24, $2,500 very steadily for that unit. They upgraded in 22. We bought a detached home for them in Milton for about 1.1. They paid almost about 100 and we bought it for about 100,000 ish, 150,000. 75 from the savings, 75 from the condo refinance, mortgage of about 900 ish. We kept their first condo as rental, used the refinance HELOC to extract another 75,000 equity, use that equity as a partial down payment on their dream house. Now, the condo is fully rented, it's cash flow positive, it's appreciating long term. The detached home they got is a big family space and it's a long term hold for them. Now we're planning the third investment. We just had a meeting with them a couple of weeks ago. The key is when we work together, I don't see it as one transaction. I see it as a long-term relationship. I often act like a real estate coach in that manner. We'll check in year after year. I'll send you market updates. We'll evaluate if it makes any sense to upsize or maybe downsize, or perhaps move to a second property and rent out the first ones. Some of the clients choose to sell their starter home and use all their equity to get a big next home, and that's fine too. We normally do not advise that, but if that's the option they want to go for, we are completely okay with that. It's another way to grow. You're basically rolling gains into your dream home. Other keep everything and just accumulate more generational wealth. It depends on your comfort level and financial situation. My team also provides support service that make owning multiple properties easier. We offer property management advice, tenant screening tip. We have a network of trusted mortgage brokers. Arjun's on the webinar as well. He's one of our trusted mortgage brokers. Uh, we can advise how home equity line of credits work. Once you have the equity, you can borrow against it to invest further. I share these stories to show you your first home can be a springboard. With smart moves in the next 5, 10 years, uh, you could be the one giving your friends advice on how you bought multiple properties. And remember that real estate portfolios are a long-term wealth generator. Many of my clients in their 20s and 30s are setting themselves up, and that by the time they're in their 50s, they could think about an earlier retirement. They might have 2, 3 homes, which is more of a financial freedom for that time of their life. It's like planting a tree. The sooner you plant, the bigger it grows. There is no rocket science behind it. If your goal is to build an investment portfolio, let me and my team know early. We will tailor your first purchase to that exact plan on where you want to end, let's say 10, 20, 30 years down the line. For example, if you want to keep the first as a rental, eventually we might target a unit that's easily rentable. That means good location, maybe a two-bedroom for a wider tenant appeal, or if you intend to convert a future basement for a rental suite, we ensure the house is suitable for that. We'll also walk through the landlord's basics so you feel confident. It helps that I personally invest in real estate too. So I practice what I preach and can share whatever experiences I'm having with my portfolios too. Now, to wrap up this section, I have only one thing to say is think long term. The first home is amazing, but don't let it be your only. Even if it's your only, it's still a forced saving that beats out the rent. But if you can stretch further, real estate can be a wealth building engine and you won't be alone. My goal is to be a realtor for life, guiding you at each and every step, whether it's the first condo, your next family home, your cottage, or your next investment duplex down the road. As one client said in a review, it's the strategic insights that they've used to build their own real estate portfolio, something that not many people think that they can achieve so soon. This really meant a lot to me because helping people realize these possibilities is why I love my job. Now it's time for some question and answers. I know we don't have a big crowd today. We had some issues with our Zoom link, but if anybody has any questions, I'll be here to answer them. And This email with these documents and some of our add-ons will be sent out to you, and along with the first-time home buyer link that's on YouTube. If you have any questions, do let me know. As of next step, if you're thinking, hey, I'm interested, what now? I invite you on a one-on-one consultation, no obligation, absolutely free of cost. We will do a casual meeting over Zoom or coffee. If you do it on Zoom, I'll make sure it's the correct link. We'll talk specifically about your situation, your budget, your needs. We'll create a personalized game plan. Whether you're looking to buy in 2 months or in 2 years, it's never too early to strategize. My contact info will be on the screen. You can follow me on Instagram as well, where I post market updates and property highlights. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. We've been working on that for some content creation. We'll make sure we post more videos this year. All right. So I just want to end it by saying I genuinely love helping first time buyers. It's usually the biggest purchase of your life and it can feel daunting. But my job is to guide you, make it as smooth as possible, maybe even make it some fun. Think of me as your real estate GPS. You tell me your direction, which is your dream home, and I'll help you navigate around all the roadblocks you get. If you're ready to start or just curious what you qualify for, let's reach out, let's talk. I can connect you with great mortgage advisors. I can have you connected with my network of the team. The earlier we connect, the more prepared you'll be when time comes to pull the trigger. If you found this webinar helpful, I'll appreciate it if you share the info with your friends and family who could also benefit.